and welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick, with the City of Hampton's Communications and Marketing Department. And today we're going to talk to two organizers of a major event in Hampton that we've had for several years now, and it's a recognition of 9/11. My guests today are John Gately from the Military Affairs Committee and Chuck Valliant, also from the MAC, as you guys call it. And I'm just going to jump right in. A lot of localities have sort of stopped marking this. 9/11 was a very painful, seminal event, but Hampton has had a remembrance ceremony every year. Well, first of all, before I ask you why, John, how did it start, or Chuck, whoever was there in the beginning?
Well, I wasn't there at the very beginning, the inception of this, but I'd welcome the opportunity, Robin, to share a bit of the history, if I might. I started in 2006. The event actually started, observances started, on December 11th, 2001. And it's an interesting story how that went about. Before I go any further, though, thank you for the opportunity, Robin, to be here on Round Robin and to talk about our Military Affairs Committee and our commitment to those who serve. Really appreciate it. There was a group that met on September 4th, 2001. Angela Leary, then a member of council, was part of that group. There were also representatives from some of the neighborhood districts of Hampton. There are 10 neighborhood districts.
That's right.
And they're looking at the possibility of having a tree lighting ceremony for the holidays. This again was September 4th, 2001. Exactly a week later, as you know, we had that day of horror and awakening for our nation, that horrific day in which nearly 3,000 Americans were killed. And Angela and the members of that group went from a sense of hopelessness to one of resolve and a determination to respond in some way. And of course, I think we all felt that way, didn't we?
I think everybody wanted to do or say, or just after a disaster like that, you want something.
Something, to claim hope despite the despair, and to believe that ours is a just world. And Angela happened to see on television, September 11th was a Tuesday. That Friday, there was a day of remembrance and hope in Washington. And that resonated with her.
She said that she even remembered hearing something about planting the seeds of hope, and that she went back and replayed it and never heard it again, but it really stuck with her.
Exactly, and that was kind of the seminal moment, and she shared that with the representatives of the neighborhoods, and they said, well, what exactly can we do? And what can we do to reflect both hope and justice? And where do we do this? And there's an interesting story she was aware of, having recently read a novel called John Adams, and it talks about a situation on August 21st, 1777, when George Washington saw over 250 British ships on the Chesapeake Bay. And they were obviously preparing to attack. And he felt he and his troops needed to respond. So on August 24th of 1777, he rallied his troops in the city of Philadelphia. And they all marched with a green sprig, evergreen, in their lapels. And from that moment on, the evergreen and the sprig of evergreen became a symbol of hope. So that was the answer. And at Gosnold's Hope Park, where we conduct the event at 8 a.m. On Tuesday, September 11th this year, there are 11 evergreens. And those 11 evergreens represent the 10 neighborhood districts of Hampton, and the center evergreen is a tree of hope, and I'm going to say a bit more in a moment, which really represents the first responders, whether they be sheriff, police, fire department, or any of the members of the armed services, Army, Marine, Navy, Air Force, or Coast Guard, how they have responded to protect us. So then the next question for that group was, how do we reflect hope? And obviously, George Washington had a hope of an independent nation and Americans enjoying freedom, establishment of the United States as a nation. So we had to ask ourselves, or she asked at that time, how do we find hope in this desperate situation? And when you look at what happened to United Airlines Flight 175, we don't have the details of how those passengers responded to that horror. Nor do we know what exactly happened on American Airlines Flights 11 or 77. But we do know a little bit about Flight 93, the one that Todd Beamer was on. And we know that there was a conscious decision by the members, the passengers there, to respond and to ensure that there was no further attack with devastating consequence to our nation. And obviously, they chose, as a group, through a vote, a democratic process, to respond in a dramatic way. And what hope we all derive from that conscious decision on their parts. And what happened next, Robin? There were people, young men and women, some not so young, who chose to enlist in the armed forces of the United States to respond to a threat. One of those young men was First Lieutenant Todd A. Weaver. And you know Todd's story. I certainly do, but graduated high school in the top portion of his class. But when he was sitting in the living room with his father, watching the devastation of September 11th, he turned to him and he said, "Dad, I have to do something about that." So he enlisted. And he served initially in Iraq, and he served in Afghanistan, gave his life in defense of his nation on September 9th, 2011. We derive hope from seeing members of our country who choose to not flee from devastation, horror, trauma, turmoil, but walk into harm's way.
And you know, I think that really gets at my initial question, which is, why is Hampton, of all of the localities in this country, it didn't happen here exactly, but why is this event a tradition and a very special personal ceremony in Hampton? And I think it is because of that military tradition, because of the number of people here who serve, have family members who've served, or who support, you know, those who do.
I think that's very perceptive of you, Robin. I think you've described it as well as I can. The moment of the attack, after a meeting with this group, Angela contacted the governors of the three states of the attack sites, which would be Pennsylvania. Actually, it was in the District of Columbia, but she talked to the governor of Virginia, and of course, New York. And she requested soils and detritus from those locations. And we're all familiar with soils, the dirt that surrounds us. But detritus is obviously what's remaining after a horrific explosion. And all three governors, without hesitation, Gilmore, Pataki, and sorry, that will have to come back to me, chose immediately to offer their soils to the city of Hampton. They came under police escort, and a planned holiday event that was tentatively scheduled for December 11th, 2001, became the first observance of the losses that day. And Governor Pataki is the last, incidentally. Why would Hampton continue to do it? We have a real passion for those who serve. And we have citizens who translate that passion to action. The 2000 census indicates that Hampton has the greatest concentration of military veterans of any city of population of 100,000 or more in our nation. That certainly suggests that our population is defined by the character and commitment, in large part, of those who serve.
And that's, you know, well, let me ask you, Chuck, what happens at this commemoration? how does the event go? We're inviting people to attend, and you said 8 a.m. on the morning of 9/11.
Let me respond first, Robin, by saying that what happened early on was a recognition of those who were lost on 9/11.
And it was very much that. The passengers, the
yes.
people in the buildings, and the first responders, the firefighters in particular.
And for several years, the major event, and it is still the major event, is the reading of the names of the fallen. And that's what is really the focus of the whole commemoration. And that really happens after the formal part of the ceremony these days, but the reading of those names. And beginning in, I think it was 2006, John, we started also reading the names of the members of our armed forces who had given their lives in the wars in Iraq and then later in Afghanistan. And that number has increased even until the last couple of weeks.
Gosh, yes.
But the remembrance, the Day of Remembrance and Hope, begins with a formal part of the ceremony. We have an invocation, the posting of our colors, the national anthem. But the key events that occur are first the recognition, and we have had for the last many years at least one family who were represented in the Pentagon with a lost member. And we will present a special memento, usually a rose and perhaps a coin, and recognize that individual or individuals for their sacrifices. And then we'll go into a recognition of each of our armed forces. And we have had in the past from the local community, a representative of all 5 of the armed forces to receive at one time a proclamation. Now we have gone to a single proclamation recognizing what they do for our country and the price they have paid. But each person there will get a Military Affairs Committee coin, and we asked the mayor to present that, and she has done that in the last couple of years, assisted by John or other members of the committee. And then we have had a featured speaker, and I will share with you that I've never been moved like I was with Don Weaver talking about his son Todd last year. And I happened to be narrating that portion, and I've done a little bit of narrating, but that got to me a little bit, more than a little bit, because I just hold our those who have paid that price in high regard, and especially this man who had lost his son and his wife were there, and they shared that. And then after that point, we want to recognize Gold Star families, those who have lost someone in a military action war for the United States, and present each of them with a rose and a coin. And that is our recognition first of the event that happened on 9/11 by recognizing survivors of those who were in the Pentagon or in the World Trade Center. And then moving on to recognizing the members of our armed forces, and then specifically those families who have had a member pay the ultimate sacrifice. Is it legal to mention a particular name? We have had for years a member of the Military Affairs Committee, Lee Lewis Sr., who lost his son in these conflicts, Junior, as a combat medic. And they were always a valued presence. Unfortunately, he went to be with our Lord this past year, but we were trying to make sure that Elvina, his wife, and a couple of his sisters will be there to recognize, especially this time. Those are special people. And then we have a featured speaker, and I will share with you, we're still looking for one this year. And what we had in mind was, rather than a senior officer, a young non-commissioned officer who had been on the ground. And that's the type we're looking for, who can share some of his experiences as we pay respect to those folks. And then the ceremony concludes, but it's not over, because we'll have a musical in there. We'll have Of course, we'll have the national anthem in the process there, and I've gotten kind of out of sequence, but I just wanted to talk to the focus of the purpose of the ceremony.
And I think, it is on 9/11 every year, and
Yes.
it is that date that you mark, and that date is a work day for a lot of people. And so you do keep the official ceremony to an hour so that people who need to
Yes.
leave, who need to get to work or to school or whatever that is, can have that defined time period.
I should mention that one of the things that usually gets everybody's attention is at the time when the first tower was struck, the North Tower, we'll chime a bell. And we'll chime it 6 times because there were 6 major events: the strike of the 2 towers, the Pentagon, the fall of the 2 towers, and the aircraft that went down in Pennsylvania. Those 6. And they continued on until after 10 o'clock that morning. So we're finished with the ceremony, so we'll ring the bell 6 times for all of those. And then hopefully we'll have our piper back to play Amazing Grace. There will then be, at the end, the playing of taps, and a rifle salute to honor those who have fallen. And then we'll invite everybody to go out and read the names. That's an experience that I would suggest anyone who cares come and be involved with. We're looking for, of course, many people here in Hampton who wish to attend. It's 6. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. That's early, but that's a special thing. But to come and also volunteer to read those names. The first time I ever did that, I stumbled because there was a name of an individual I knew in the Pentagon who had died, and had worked with him years before when we were both junior officers on a couple projects. And what are the odds of being handed that piece of paper? Because we have people who are dealing with sheets and sheets and sheets of names, but to find his name. Very meaningful.
Well, and that gets back to that Hampton connection too, where people here were likely to have known someone, particularly at the Pentagon, certainly New York also, but those strong and deep military ties.
Absolutely, and we need help to ensure that every one of those names is read. Back in 2006, we went to the Pentagon and planted a tree of hope near their metro station and exported our ceremony to them. And we met family members, both of those in the West Wing of the Pentagon who had lost loved ones there, and a family member of the flight that impacted on the Pentagon. And we were able to look those family members in the eye and say that we, since 2001, December 11, have been reading the names of your loved one. And it makes a great difference. And why do we continue this, Robin? Because we said we would, and we communicated that specifically to Gold Star family members. We said, as long as we have American troops with boots on the ground in the combat zone, we will continue this. And we will read your son and daughter's name aloud. May I share what Don Weaver shared with us last year, very briefly?
Well, I'll tell you what, let's end on that note.
Yes.
So we're just going to recap to people. If you want to be involved in this ceremony, you can go to hampton.gov/MAC, and you'll find John's email address there and phone number, and you can get in touch with a committee member and let people know that we do, hope they will come out at 8 o'clock in the morning on the 11th. And John, let's close with you reading this, if we could.
Thank you, Robin. And what an appropriate ending. Thank you. I never would have thought of that myself. But this is Don Weaver speaking of the sacrifice of his son. And a week ago, the total number of Americans lost in Iraq and Afghanistan was around 6,913. So Don, in his remarks at our Day of Remembrance and Hope last year, expressed this. The ancient Greeks had a saying, a man is not dead until he is forgotten. I hope that our story, the story of their son Todd, has helped you to put a face on all of those who have made the ultimate sacrifice. For our family, time helps us navigate our thoughts of Todd. But he's always with us. He's just a memory away. For you to take the time on this day to recognize the ultimate sacrifice given by our military and those who face their rendezvous with destiny on that late summer day in 2001 is a priceless gift. Your presence is an important sign of remembrance for the 9/11 fallen, for the first responders, all our military members, all their families, and to our family. Keep all in your hearts every day of the year. Thank you, Robin.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for watching.